You're listening to The Briefing, first broadcast on the 18th of December 2025 on Monocle Radio. Hello and welcome to The Briefing, broadcasting to you live from Studio One here at Midori House in London. I'm Tom Edwards. Coming up on today's programme, the race is on to find the new British ambassador to the United States. Our foreign editor will be here to tell us about the top contenders. After that, we turn our focus to Italy. Monocle's Anita Riotta has been browsing today's papers. What do you have for us today, Anita?
Tom, we're going to break down why today is a truly blockbuster day for Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, and then we'll discuss one of the most incredible stories I've seen in a long time.
Can't wait to hear more about that. More from Anita on the way a little later. And as it's Thursday, and as ever, Fernando Augusto Pacheco will be looking through the charts to bring us some hits, hopefully. Where are we heading today, Faye?
Hello, Tom. Today we look at the appeal of the Christmas #1 in the UK.
I can hardly wait for that. All that and more ahead here on The Briefing with me, Tom Edwards. A very warm welcome to this Thursday edition of the programme. And we do start right here in the UK with a look at the race to replace Peter Mandelson as the British ambassador to the United States of America. Mandelson, you may recall, was dismissed from the post in September over his controversial friendship with Jeffrey Epstein. Well, Monocle's foreign editor Alexis Self, I'm delighted to say, has joined me here in the studio to bring us up to speed. Good afternoon, Lex.
Good afternoon, Tom.
Now tell me, this is always an interesting appointment, and obviously I guess at Monocle we're probably sort of overweight interest in diplomacy and these kind of ambassadorial appointments, perhaps because of our interest in soft power and all the rest. But this one is a delicate appointment, and there's so many different factors acting on even the selection process. Tell us where we're at.
So today, the Foreign Office is expected to announce who the UK's new ambassador to the US will be this afternoon. We've already heard that Varun Chandra, who's number 10's top business advisor and who had been talked up as the most likely candidate, will not be the ambassador. And that leaves two likely frontrunners. The first is Nigel Casey, who's the British ambassador to Moscow, and the other is Christian Turner, who's soon to take up post as Britain's envoy to the UN. Now, as you said, this is probably Britain's most important diplomatic posting, given the importance that the country places on its special relationship with the US, and given all the controversy around Mandelson and his exit, it has extra weight. Now, part of the reason why Varun Chandra, I think, has been ruled out is because he would be a political appointment rather than a career diplomat. And one of the few things that Keir Starmer, the British Prime Minister, has been praised for since taking office last year is his foreign policy, and particularly his managing of the relationship with Donald Trump, a man who probably, and a politician who probably couldn't be more different from Keir Starmer. So given the embarrassment over Mandelson and his eventual exit, this is incredibly important that Starmer gets this right.
And it's interesting, of course, that UK-US trade deal, there was this sort of tech components that were, again, kind of lauded at the time by all the different stakeholders, which have been paused, I guess, as Trump tries to sort of exercise different parts of leverage on his relationship with the UK, just underscores how delicate the balance will be. And as you mentioned, Chandra, a very sort of business-first potential appointment. Obviously, he's now not in the running. What about the others? Turner, a bit more of a sort of multilateralist. One could imagine that maybe wouldn't play so well in the White House. Casey's credentials may be boosted by having that posting in Moscow, right? Dealing with volatility, unpredictability of a very different sort of character, but it's as unpredictable potentially, and now in a very different way than it has been in the past with the DC posting.
Well, one could argue that perhaps it isn't that different, but also that, Casey's done a good job insofar as you can do, given the state of diplomatic relations between the UK and Russia, which are pretty threadbare. But, does London want to risk pulling someone as seasoned and experienced as him out of Moscow at the moment? I would argue not. I think, given the transactional nature of US diplomacy at the moment, Chandra was seen as someone who has close ties to many of the, especially business people who make up the core of the Trump administration, and having been influential not only in this tech prosperity deal, but recent announcements by US banks to particularly JP Morgan to invest heavily in London and build new headquarters here. So, yeah, I think that given the political nature of Starmer's difficulties at the moment, I think that's the reason he's gone for a career diplomat. Whether or not this person will be able to interact with Trump in an effective way. And actually, I think there was surprise that Karen Pierce, who was London's former ambassador to the US before Peter Mandelson, wasn't extended in the post or given extension in the post, given her closeness to MAGA style Republicans. And she's a career diplomat, although slightly unorthodox. So, it doesn't have to be the kind of, typical or stereotypical kind of grey Mandarin who goes into that role.
And Lex, I guess, I started off by saying we're really interested in these manoeuvrings and, with our fascination in soft power, and we understand the importance of convening people, the power of the face-to-face still. It's funny, as sort of ideologically entrenched in his own Trumpism as Trump is, clearly he is somebody who will make decisions based on a meeting of personalities, albeit the criteria he uses may be somewhat unpredictable, but there is an opportunity to try to not to appease Trump sort of politically or in economic terms or in geopolitical terms, but just to get someone who knows how to marshal him. Is there a risk that actually lots of whether it's governments or frontline politicians underestimate the importance of the face-to-face, someone who's just good with people? Do you think that is maybe a bit of an undervalued sort of resource generally?
Definitely. And I think that there's a temptation to stereotype countries based on their diplomatic representatives as, embodying that nation's traits or characteristics. I think that often you would look at Mandelson and his interactions with Trump and see him playing that kind of, Woodhouseian, sort of Jeeves-esque character. He looks a bit like a kind of butler and, witticisms and, making sly witticisms and laughing at Trump's sort of American, extrovertedness or extroversions. I think that was part of the appeal of Mandelson and of Karen Pierce, who in a different way, embodied certain stereotypes about Britain as well. I think given Trump and the Trump administration's, desire or, their way of doing things, which is to kind of circumvent traditional, especially diplomatic mechanisms and interact on a very personal level and strike deals, face to face and handshake to handshake. I think that you do want someone in there who at least can charm Trump. And
an easy brief coming up for somebody then this afternoon. Well, we'll keep a close eye, Lex. Great to have your take on things. That was Lex's Self, Monocle's foreign editor, joining me here in Studio One for the briefing. Plenty going on around the world. Let's cross over to the other studio. Carlotta Rebello is standing by with the day's other news headlines.
Thanks, Tom. The United States and Taiwan have announced an $11 billion arms package, marking Washington's biggest ever military sales to the island. The deal includes anti-tank missiles and military software, as Taiwan ramps up military purchases in recent years as it comes under increasing pressure from Beijing. The European Union has agreed to indefinitely immobilize the assets of the Russian central bank. The law prohibits the transfer of the 210 billion euros in assets back to Russia. Instead, they will be channeled into a zero-interest reparations loan to support Ukraine. And South Korean men are relocating to Japan in record numbers, not only for jobs, but also for long-term residents. Tough hiring conditions, longer working hours, as well as relationships with Japanese partners are some of the driving factors. The increase in male overseas transfers has jumped 8% over 4 years. Those are today's headlines. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you very much indeed, Carlotta. More news headlines coming your way at the top of the next hour, 1300 here in London. Time now, though, on the briefing as the clock ticks past 10 minutes past midday to take a look at what's making the news in Italy. To go through the day's papers there, I'm joined, I'm delighted to say, by Monocle's producer, Anita Riotta. Good afternoon, Anita.
Hi, Tom.
Where are we going to start? Italy, France relations, perhaps?
Yes, I mean, technically, we are starting in Brussels. As we alluded at the top of the show, it's been an incredibly seismic week, if not seismic day today, for Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni. EU leaders are in Brussels, and as any listeners in Brussels will know, thousands of farmers have descended on the city. They're driving around tractors in protest of a proposed EU trade deal with Mercosur, basically the bloc's South American counterpart. It would be an incredibly comprehensive trade deal. It would establish one of the biggest free trade blocks in the world, I think the biggest. And the deal has been in the works for 25 years. It would be considered a real feather in the cap of EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen. And all of that was expected to finally come to fruition this week. And it came to a grinding halt yesterday when both Italy and France said they were not ready to back the deal. They said that their reticence is coming over the fact that there are not enough protections for farmers. But today, as EU leaders come together to see if they can hammer out a final deal, a yes from Rome, even if we get a no from Paris, would be enough to push the deal over the line. So she is really taking center stage as the linchpin of this enormous deal, again, that is decades in the work. Now, there are some arguments whether her reticence to sign the deal is really as noble as protecting her domestic farmers, or if there are other things at play. But that is the first way that she is taking really center stage at the EU this week.
As you say, Meloni certainly has plenty on her plate, a busy old in-tray. What about Ukraine? It's interesting, there's some stories moving this week here in the UK about frozen assets belonging to certain high-profile Russians, Roman Abramovich, in particular the former owner of Chelsea Football Club. Meloni's having to contend with this as well.
Absolutely. That is the other huge decision on the table today at this EU summit in Brussels. There are two camps that have emerged. Of course, those that are in favor of using these funds. There are Russian assets frozen in Belgium and use these funds to aid Ukraine's defense at this very precarious moment in the war in Ukraine. But Italy now has moved itself into the camp that is saying, let's slow things down. Let's look at the alternatives. Let's look at mutual financing. Let's look at maybe coming up with funds in another way, maybe loans, maybe, complicated economic mechanisms. But they are concerned that this is not a legally founded decision. And there are other European leaders that are saying, no, we have to act now. Poland's prime minister came out and said the decision is either money today or blood tomorrow. So it's really coming to a head. And again, Italy is one of these few really digging in their heels and saying, I'm not quite sure this is correct. So again, swaying her on this matter today is going to be of fundamental importance.
Let's get things onto the rails. At Rome's new stations, and I'm asking as an old relic myself, Anita, what can we see? There's some interesting diversions potentially available, people. Tell us about this.
It's incredible. So in one of two newly opened subway stations in Rome, only opened this week, which is something I would more leave to our urbanism expert Carlotta, that Rome is only opening subway stops today in 2025. But the story we are looking at today is that in digging these new subway lines and opening these new stations, they have found amazing ancient relics. So commuters in Rome that take line C and get off at the Colosseum stop can see thermal baths that have been dated back to 64 AD. So we are talking really ancient stuff. Or they could see one of 28 ancient wells. There's all of these military barracks that they found, and it slowed down work significantly. I was reading that at some point it was getting so sort of sensitive and precarious that digging had to be done by hand.
Wow, okay.
To get things moving. So, as maybe it will help commuters in the hustle and bustle to slow down, take in some history on their way to work. And that's quite nice. I mean, we get some mice every now and again. Not as incredible, but
perhaps not as culturally significant. I guess if you dig around the Colosseum, one should not be overly
it's not
surprised
shocking,
to find
is
these
it?
things. They always just seem to find graves in London when they dig.
True. Slightly more morbid, but, historic
I guess
nonetheless.
We were kind of occupied at that period. Now, you mentioned this at the top of the show, Anita, and I was pretty excited. You've got... how did you describe it? Your favourite story? I think,
most
did you say
incredible?
Ever?
I mean, ever, I don't know, but it probably has to be high up there.
Okay, go on.
So,
I'll steel myself. What is this one about?
So I would like to just paint you a picture,
Go
if
on.
I may. One day, the mayor of Galatone, a town in the southern region of Puglia, goes on a walk and, stopping in one of the many beautiful piazzas in his town, takes his time to admire a nativity scene that has been created for Christmas. As anyone who has been to Italy around the Christmas holidays know, we do nativity scenes incredibly well. They are life-size, they are beautiful, they are realistic, and he's really taking in this incredible work of art. And he's thinking to himself, as the mayor of this town, I should really write to the artists that made it and congratulate them on how incredibly lifelike these statues are. It's just a wonder to behold. And then he keeps looking and he keeps looking and he thinks, no, that one is too realistic. No, that's a real person. And it turns out that it was indeed a real person that was hiding in the nativity scene to escape a 9-month prison sentence because of, some charges. And can we say slightly brilliant, unhinged, creative, visionary? I don't know. I could not tell you what the right word is. But his decision was, I will hide and pose as one of the figures in this nativity scene.
Okay. A, that's amazing. B, which figure, have you got, how deep is your knowledge of this? Which figure was he in the scene? Was he
I think he's
human,
maybe
I guess?
hoping...
Was he a sheep or an ass?
I mean, that would be some real character acting, and I would be even more impressed. Maybe he's hoping the mayor doesn't know how many wise men showed up, and he's the fourth.
The odd four wise men. So we don't actually know. Is it confirmed what role he was playing specifically?
I think he had to create a new role for himself. I don't think he removed a statue. I think he just added himself in the background.
How was he dressed? Have you got photographic evidence?
I will send you a photo, and then I will.
This is
we
no
have
good
to
for
put
our
it.
audience.
I don't know, in the Monocle Minute or something.
Maybe.
We have
People
to get
can
it
Google
in there.
it to find out. I kind of like that. Just trying to think
It's
quickly.
incredible.
I
was going to say, who would you hide as?
Probably, and this may be sacrilegious, but the baby, get wrapped up in some swaddling cloths, take a load off.
Yeah.
Are you allowed to do that?
Can you? Yeah, you'd be cozy.
'Cause otherwise he's
and it'd be
standing, no?
easy because you're laying down.
That's what I'm
You
saying.
don't have to be standing all day.
But then
it's
my
probably
feet
the
might-
easiest role.
My feet might stick out the manger.
But how convincing of a baby would we make? That's for the audience to say.
I don't know. I'm just reeling from that. What a brilliant story. Anita, thank you. From the sublime to the utterly ridiculous, an excellent Italian news wrap with Anita Riotta here on The Briefing. The special sound that means it's time for the Global Countdown with Monocle's senior correspondent, Fernando Augusto Pacheco. Good afternoon, Fernando.
Good afternoon. Great to be here, Tom.
Did you hear that story?
Fascinating. I was super intrigued. I did see the picture, actually.
Now, tell me, if you were to install yourself in a disguise in a nativity scene, which character would you play?
I would go for Jesus, really.
Yeah.
I mean,
what's wrong with us?
Very obvious. I mean, and can I tell you something? Although, Tom, I'm not extremely religious, whatever, but I love a nativity. I think it's fascinating, and they kind of disappeared, but I think they are coming back. So I think they're quite cute.
According to Nita, very popular all across Italy.
Oh yeah, especially Italy.
Can we introduce a little bit more of a Paulista flavour? I don't know, maybe some. One of the kings, set of Speedos. Is this definitely sacrilegious? I don't know.
Potentially, but as always with me, there's always some sacrilege involved. But in a cute way.
Cute sacrilege involved.
Yes.
Quote of the day we have. Right, Fernando. Speaking of nativity scenes, you mentioned at the top of the show there is a unmistakably Yuletide flavour to proceedings this week.
Absolutely, and I decided to come to the UK. I go to many countries around the world, but sometimes I say, let's look at the UK. One thing that I find fascinating about this country, I think the Christmas number one really matter here, and it has a fascinating history throughout time. And in fact, we might start. We're not looking at the new contenders. We're looking at some of my favorite Christmas number ones of all time in chronological order.
Oh, okay, I like it.
But just so you see how fascinating it is, tomorrow we're going to find out the number one. It could be Kylie's new track called Xmas or Christmas. It could be When, once again. It could be Mariah Carey. It could be Together for Palestine, which is a kind of a charity single by many artists, or Brenda Lee. And apparently the race is
it's very close, is it?
It's very close. We do not know who's going to be doing this one.
Would it be fair to say in recent years, and now this may be more of a reflection of my advancing years, it seems to be more novelty records, general kind of, can I say, craporama?
I feel very sad about this, and I was very surprised that Lad Baby had 5 Christmas number one, and I can tell you, listeners, he's not going to be on my top 5. Okay,
What a relief!
What a relief! I agree, because it's something so special. And I was even talking to our colleague Marielle, and she was saying, "Oh, I didn't actually realize that this song was a Christmas number one, because it doesn't need to feel Christmassy. Sometimes the most iconic songs of all time have been released around this period." So, I mean, I'll tell you a little kind of history lesson.
Let's kick off. So you mentioned chronology.
Yeah.
How far are we going back, Fernando?
Well, we're starting 1964, and I did not...
I don't remember it, before you ask.
I'm sure you remember this. I'm joking. I did not choose the most obvious tracks from the Beatles, because they had, I believe, more than one Christmas track. I think they had a One to Hold Your Hand, which everybody knows. But I think this one is such a breezy, beautiful track. From 1964, we're going to start with the Beatles, I Feel Fine.
Baby's good to me, she's happy as can be, she said so. I'm in love with her and I feel fine.
I mean, it's incredible. And we think 3, maybe, for the Beatles?
3? Well, I Want to Hold Your Hand for sure. The other one, I should have a look.
Okay, he doesn't know, listeners. So I won't put him. I was going to ask you.
Oh, God.
But that's great. So 64 and proper pop royalty. When kind of having a number one record, is it kind of mattered? It mattered a lot, Fernando.
Mattered a lot. And it's interesting about this track, I did not know. Apparently, it's the first usage of guitar feedback on a recorded track. So a lot of bands were using kind of guitar feedbacks, but this one, and apparently was created almost accidentally by John Lennon. So there's been some interesting elements in this track from 1964, kind of some originality there for the Beatles.
Faye, that is some rock solid chart trivia. Where are we going next?
This one, it's a bit random even for me, but I feel emotional with this track. This one perhaps is the most Christmassy of all the tracks we're playing. It's by an American singer. He's known for his classy romantic ballads. It's Johnny Mathis, and we're going back to 1976. I love a beautiful ballad like this, When a Child is Born.
This comes to pass when a child is born. A silent wish sails the 7 seas. The winds
I like like this one as well,
Well,
Tom.
do you know what strikes me? 76. I thought that actually was earlier than that. And it's what is interesting. Look at the general prevailing musical mood of the nation. 76.
God
we're
save
in
the
peak.
Queen.
Yeah. What have we got? Disco,
Yeah.
punk, first wave punk, absolutely at its peak. But at Christmas, people want that kind of loungy vibe. You know, even when the prevailing winds are blowing in a different direction, you get these
Surprises.
stellar tracks. It's beautiful.
And it's interesting that the British particularly love this track because in the US was only number 123 in the charts.
Okay, that's not great for Johnny.
They didn't love it. I mean, they loved other Johnny's tracks, but and he turned 90 this year. So he retired from the stage this year.
Faye, this is a terrible thing to say. Is he still around?
Still around. I think there's some difficulties here and there, and that's why he stopped.
Good for him. Well, Johnny, if you're listening, the best of
We
festive
love you,
to
Johnny. We
Exactly.
love you, Johnny.
Wow, God, it's kind of emotional. And that is what the great Christmas tracks can do. Faye, listen, we started in the 60s, then the 70s. Can I question whether potentially we're going into the 80s next?
Absolutely. We're going to 1981. And before I introduced this track, I was very surprised reading about it that the vocalist of this band did not like the song very much. And that song is only the 4th single of that album, which is very surprising because it's one of the best-selling songs of all time. And I love stories like this that very randomly, suddenly, a track like this become a success. Of course, you know, our listeners will know. I know this one. 1981 is the Human League, Don't You Want Me?
You were working as a waitress in a cocktail bar. When I met you, I picked you out, I shook you up and turned you.
I mean, that is an absolute banger.
Wow. And how funny the feel, he was like, I don't like this. And it was only the 4th single of the album there. So I think they released The Sound of the Crowd, Love Action, and another single. And then
I mean, Love Action is an absolute belter as well.
And then the label was like, no, you have to record this. And I was like, okay, you know. And then suddenly Christmas #1.
Phil, what an absolute monster. Some of my very favourite 80s synth tracks involve Phil. His amazing, the track that he made with Giorgio Moroder.
Together in Electric Dreams.
Just absolutely brilliant.
Oh,
wall
gosh.
to wall. Faye, should we keep things in a kind of synthy 80s
Yes.
environment?
And I think we're heading to 1987 now. So we're almost approaching the 90s. Some say that this is one of the best covers of all time. And again, talking about accidental kind of releases. Basically, the Pet Shop Boys were performing...
You're always talking about accidental releases on air, Fernando.
Exactly. Oh, gosh, Todd. Very naughty of you. But basically, they were performing on ITV on a show to celebrate 10 years of Elvis Presley's death. Because, of course, his version of Always on My Mind was a massive hit. And then people loved it. And they were like, you have to release this. And, of course, they did. And, you know, it's one of the most streamed songs by the Pet Shop Boys ever. It's beautiful. It's the Pet Shop Boys, Always on My Mind.
Little things I should have said and done. I never took the time. You were always on my mind. You were always on.
Oh, the Pet Shop Boys.
I mean, that is just so good.
There's so... And you know what? I'm very excited for next year because the Pet Shop Boys, they still like their fans. They're going to perform in Camden Town this next year. Only the B-sides. And I managed to get tickets for that in April. I'm very excited.
Wow, okay. And it's one of these funny ones, improbably, some might say. And my musical tastes, listen, are very Catholic, as people know. And I'm
Yes.
maybe usually rocking out quite a lot. Pet Shop Boys, here, particularly in the UK, so important over 25, 30 years. Amazing, incredible.
I moved here because of that. In a way, they really influenced.
There you go, Neil and Chris. You never thought you'd get that
Exactly.
Faye, where are we going to go then? So do we drag ourselves into the 1990s potentially?
Yes, I did not want to reach the 2000s because Led Baby, you know. So I decided to stop in 96. And you know what? It's a cute Christmas song and it's also good for teenagers at the time because it was all about safe sex. It's the Spice Girls. Chubby Come On, 96.
Come a little bit closer, baby. Get it on, 'cause tonight is the night when two become one. I need some love like I never needed love before.
Faye, I was a teenager then.
Yeah, of course.
I kept myself very safe. As a failure, it was easy.
Be a little bit wiser, baby. Put it on. I thought it was a great message back in 96.
Sexy Christmas tracks, Fernando.
That's what I like.
Okay, listen, we always go through these motions. 5 very contrasting, but each in their own way, incredible Christmas songs. You're marooned on a desert island, maybe on Christmas Island, Faye. You can only take one. Which would it be?
I'm taking Pet Shop Boys, always in my mind.
Oh, it was decisive.
Oh, yeah. Oh,
Not
yeah.
even a moment's hesitation.
Which one would you take? Human League, no?
I don't know. I think I might have to take Neil and Chris.
Perfect.
Faye, we're agreeing again about music.
So at least if we're together in the desert island, there will be no fights.
Faye, it's a Christmas miracle here on Monocle Radio. Fernando Augusto Pacheco, lovely Christmas stuff. Best of festive to you. That, my friends, is where we shall leave both the Global Countdown and this edition of The Briefing, which was expertly produced by Carlotta Ribello. Our researcher was Joanna Moser. Our studio manager was Mariella Bevan. My thanks to them, one and all. We'll be back tomorrow at the very same time, noon in London. I'm Tom Edwards. Goodbye, and thanks for listening.